I found my husband and best friend in our bed on our 5th anniversary. The look on their faces when I walked in said everything, and their excuses made it worse. My life now is nothing like I planned. I never thought I'd be writing this post. 2 days ago, my entire world came crashing down around me. I'm still in shock as I type this, but I need to get it off my chest and maybe hear from others who have gone through similar situations. I'm Jessica, 29F, and until 2 days ago, I thought I had a pretty good life with my husband Mark, 31M. We've been married for 5 years, and I believed we were happy. I guess I was wrong about a lot of things. Mark and I met in our junior year of college. We were both business majors and ended up partnered for a semester-long marketing project. I remember noticing his confident walk and the way he always seemed to make others laugh. During those late nights working on our project in the library, we discovered we had a lot in common. We both loved 90s action movies, hiking, and had the same terrible taste in music that our friends always made fun of us for. By the time we turned in our final presentation, which got an A, by the way, I knew there was something special between us. We started dating soon after, and things moved pretty smoothly from there. Sure, we had our disagreements, especially during senior year when we were both stressed about finding jobs and figuring out our futures. There was that big fight about whether to apply for jobs in different cities, and the time he forgot my birthday because he was cramming for finals. But we always worked through our problems. After graduation, we were lucky enough to land jobs in the same city. Mark started at a marketing firm while I joined a tech company's communications team. A year later, we moved in together. Our first apartment was tiny with barely functioning plumbing, but it was ours. 2 years after that, Mark took me to the lake where we'd had our first weekend trip together and proposed at sunset. It wasn't flashy, just us, the water, and a simple ring that he'd saved up for months to buy. The first few years of marriage were good. We established our routines. Thursday night was always date night, no matter how busy work got. We joined a rock climbing gym together and spent weekends exploring hiking trails. Mark would sometimes surprise me with concert tickets to bands we both liked, and I'd leave silly notes in his lunch bag when he wasn't looking. We talked about starting a family in a few years once our careers were more established. Things changed 8 months ago when my best friend Karen, 28F, needed a place to stay. Karen and I have been friends since middle school. We met when we were both picked last for volleyball teams in PE class and bonded over our mutual lack of athletic ability. She was the person I called when I got my first period, when I failed my driver's test twice, and when I had my first heartbreak in high school. She was my maid of honor at my wedding to Mark. After college, Karen pursued her dream of becoming a graphic designer. She's incredibly talented but had trouble finding steady work in her field. 8 months ago, she lost her apartment when her roommate suddenly moved out, and she couldn't afford the rent on her own while working part-time at a coffee shop. She called me late one night, and I could hear in her voice that she was at her breaking point. Without much thought, I offered her our spare bedroom until she could get back on her feet. When I told Mark about it, he wasn't thrilled. He mentioned something about valuing our privacy and worrying that having someone else in our space might change our dynamic. But after seeing how important it was to me, he agreed, though he made it clear he thought it should be temporary. The first few months with Karen living with us were fine. She kept her space clean, contributed to groceries when she could, and even cooked dinner for us a couple of times a week. She makes an amazing lasagna that became a Friday night tradition. She was actively looking for full-time design work and would share her portfolio updates with us, asking for feedback. Mark and Karen got along well enough. They discovered they both enjoyed old horror movies, and sometimes I'd come home to find them watching some obscure film from the 70s, debating whether the special effects were so bad they were good or just plain bad. They also started going to trivia night at the local pub together on Tuesdays when I had my late meetings at work. About 4 months ago, I started noticing small changes. Mark began staying out later than usual after work. When he'd come home, he'd sometimes smell like he'd had a drink or two. When I asked about it, he'd say he was just unwinding with colleagues. I didn't think much of it. Mark had recently taken on a big account at work and was under a lot of pressure. I was busy myself. My company was launching a new product, and I was heading the communications strategy. Some weeks, I was barely home before 9 p.m., and I'd be too tired to do much besides eat whatever leftovers were in the fridge and fall asleep. Mark and I were like two ships passing in the night. 2 days ago was our 5th wedding anniversary. Despite my hectic schedule, I managed to leave work early to surprise Mark. I picked up a bottle of his favorite whiskey and was looking forward to a quiet evening together. When I got home, I heard voices coming from our bedroom. I figured Karen might be borrowing something, so I walked toward the door. That's when I heard words that made my blood run cold. Karen's voice: "Mark, we need to stop this. Jessica is my best friend. I can't keep doing this to her." Mark's response: "I know, but I can't help how I feel about you. We'll figure something out." I pushed open the door. The looks on their faces told me everything I needed to know. Karen was sitting on our bed, with her shirt half unbuttoned. Mark was standing by the window, his hair messed up in that way it only gets after. I couldn't even finish the thought. What followed was a blur of shouting and crying. Karen kept saying it wasn't planned, that it just happened. Mark tried to grab my arm, saying we needed to talk about this rationally. I yanked away from him and demanded to know how long it had been going on. 6 weeks, they said. It started after a trivia night when I was away on a business trip. They'd had too much to drink and one thing led to another. They swore it was just supposed to be a one-time mistake, but then it happened again. And again. All those late nights at work for both of them suddenly made sense. The hushed conversations that stopped when I entered a room. The inside jokes I wasn't part of anymore. The way Karen would sometimes avoid eye contact with me at breakfast. I couldn't breathe. The two people I trusted most in the world had betrayed me in the worst possible way. I grabbed my keys, my purse, and left. I didn't even pack a bag. I just needed to get out of there. I drove to my coworker Jen's place. She opened the door, took one look at my face, and pulled me inside without asking questions. I spent that night on her couch, staring at the ceiling, replaying every moment of the past few months in my head, looking for signs I should have seen. My phone kept buzzing with texts and calls from both of them, but I couldn't bear to look. Jen brought me tea and sat with me in silence when I couldn't talk and listened when I finally could. The next morning, I called in sick to work for the first time in 2 years. I went back to the apartment when I knew Mark would be at work. Karen was there, but I ignored her completely as I packed some clothes and essential items. She tried to talk to me, following me around the apartment, but I acted as if she wasn't even there. I'm staying at Jen's for now until I figure out what to do next. Mark has called 37 times. Karen sent a long email explaining how sorry she is, how she'll move out immediately, how she never meant for any of this to happen. As if that makes it better. The betrayal cuts so deep because it's doubled. My husband, the man who promised to love and respect me for the rest of our lives. And Karen, who's been my constant support since we were awkward 13-year-olds with braces. How am I supposed to move forward from this? I keep thinking about our wedding day. Mark's voice cracked when he said his vows. Karen cried and hugged me so tight afterward, whispering that she was so happy for me. Was it all fake? How long had he been looking at her differently? Was I just convenient until something better came along? I haven't told my parents yet. They love Mark. My dad taught him how to change the oil in my car. My mom sends him birthday cards with scratch-off lottery tickets because she knows he gets a kick out of them. And they adore Karen too. She spent countless holidays with my family when her own parents were going through their divorce. Work has been my only escape these past 2 days. Even though I called in sick yesterday, I've been answering emails on my phone just to have something else to think about. My boss texted to make sure I was okay, and I couldn't bring myself to tell him the truth, so I just said I had a stomach bug. I don't know what happens next. Do I try to save my marriage? The thought of looking at Mark's face again makes my stomach turn. Do I throw away 5 years because of this mistake? Can I ever trust him again? And what about Karen? She's been part of my life for 16 years. Do I just cut her out completely? I'm lost and could use any advice from people who have been through something similar. How did you cope? Did you stay or leave? Does the pain ever go away? Update 1. First, I want to thank everyone for the supportive comments and messages. Reading them during those first few dark weeks helped more than you know. It's been 2 months since my world fell apart, and I wanted to give an update on where things stand. After a lot of thought and several difficult conversations, I've decided to file for divorce from Mark. The trust is broken beyond repair, and I can't see a path forward for us as a couple. The week after I discovered their affair, I stayed at Jen's place, barely eating or sleeping. I ignored most of Mark's calls but finally agreed to meet him at a coffee shop to talk. I chose a public place because I didn't trust myself to be alone with him without breaking down. He arrived before me and had already ordered my usual drink. The familiar gesture that used to seem sweet now felt manipulative. He looked terrible, unshaven, with dark circles under his eyes. He started by saying how sorry he was, that he'd made the biggest mistake of his life, that he would do anything to fix things. I asked him questions I needed answers to. Had he ever cheated before? No, he swore this was the first and only time. Did he love her? He hesitated just long enough for me to know the truth before he denied it. Why her? Why my best friend? He didn't have a good answer for that one. At one point he reached for my hand across the table, and I pulled back so quickly I knocked over my coffee. As the barista came over with a cloth to clean up, I saw the look of pity in her eyes. That's what I've become, a woman to be pitied. A week later, I met with Karen. She'd moved out of our apartment and was staying with a coworker from the coffee shop. She cried through most of our conversation. She told me she'd been dealing with depression after a string of career rejections and had started drinking more than usual. She said Mark had been kind to her when she was at her lowest, and things escalated from there. She apologized over and over. I asked her the same questions I'd asked Mark. Her answers were more forthright, but no less painful to hear. There was one moment when she mentioned how she and Mark would sometimes talk about me when I wasn't around. Nothing malicious, she insisted, just conversations about how they both cared about me, and something in me snapped. The idea of them discussing me while carrying on behind my back was too much to bear. I told her I couldn't forgive her right now and maybe not ever. 16 years of friendship destroyed in 6 weeks of poor decisions. She nodded and said she understood, that she'd give me all the space I needed. Breaking the news to my family was one of the hardest things I've ever done. I drove to my parents' house on a Sunday afternoon. Dad was watching a baseball game, and Mom was gardening. I sat them down and just said it straight. Mark had been having an affair with Karen, and I was filing for divorce. Mom started crying immediately. Dad got very quiet, then stood up and walked out of the room. I heard him in the garage, moving things around forcefully. When he came back in, his eyes were red. He asked if I was sure about the divorce, if there was any chance of working things out. I told him I'd made up my mind. The news spread through the family quickly. My brother called that night, offering to fly in from Chicago to have a talk with Mark. I appreciated the gesture but told him no. My aunt suggested marriage counseling, while my uncle wanted to know if adultery would help me get a better settlement in the divorce. The divided reactions only added to my stress. I found a small apartment across town. The rent is more than I wanted to pay, but I needed a fresh start away from the memories. Moving out of the place Mark and I shared was both painful and freeing. Each item I packed had a story attached to it. The coffee maker we bought on our honeymoon, the throw pillows we argued about because he thought they were too decorative to be functional, the framed photo from our first dating anniversary. In the end, I left more behind than I took, wanting to travel light into my new life. The divorce proceedings have started. Mark initially wanted to try counseling, arguing that we could work through this. When I remained firm about wanting a divorce, he became less cooperative. Now he's questioning the division of assets and asking for more time before each step of the process. My lawyer says this is common, a stalling tactic from the guilty party. I've thrown myself into work as a distraction. My boss has been understanding, giving me flexibility for lawyer appointments and moving days. Last week, he mentioned there might be an opening for a senior position in the department soon. Part of me is excited about the opportunity, while another part wonders if I can handle more responsibility when my personal life is in shambles. As for Karen, she sent me a text last week saying she's moving to Portland where her cousin lives. She's lined up a few freelance design projects there and wants to make a fresh start. Part of me was relieved she's leaving town, while another part felt an unexpected pang at the finality of it all. 16 years of friendship, gone. I've tried to keep my social circle intact, but it's complicated. Some mutual friends have picked sides. Others seem uncomfortable around me now, as if divorce and betrayal might be contagious. I've reconnected with a few old college friends who've been wonderfully supportive. Jen continues to be my rock, checking in regularly, bringing over takeout on the nights she knows I have meetings with the lawyer, and never once saying I told you so, though she never did like Mark much. There are still hard days. Last week, I was grocery shopping and saw Mark and Karen at the store together. I abandoned my cart in the middle of the cereal aisle and left without buying anything. I drove to a park and sat in my car for an hour, just breathing. The next day, I drove 30 minutes to a different grocery store. I'm not ready to think about dating again. A guy at the gym asked for my number recently, and I felt physically ill at the thought. I'm focusing on rebuilding my relationship with myself first. Several people have suggested therapy, and I'm considering it. Right now, I'm handling things day by day. Some mornings, I wake up forgetting for a split second what happened, and then the memories come flooding back. Other days, I feel almost normal until a song comes on the radio that reminds me of Mark, or I see something that Karen would have found funny, and I'm right back in that bedroom doorway, discovering their betrayal all over again. I'm taking things one day at a time and trying to be patient with myself through this process. The life I planned is gone, but I'm determined to build something new from the pieces that remain. Thank you all again for your support, it means more than you know. Update 2, it's been 10 months since my original post, and I wanted to share where things stand now. The divorce was finalized 4 months ago. The day I signed the papers was surreal, part sad, part relieved, mostly numb. My lawyer had prepared me for a potentially contentious process given how Mark had been stalling, but in the end, he agreed to an equitable split. We sold the apartment and divided the proceeds. I kept my car and most of the furniture. He kept his retirement account and his grandmother's antique clock that always chimed at the wrong time. After signing, I drove to the beach alone and walked along the shore for hours. An older woman was there with her dog, and the dog kept bringing me a piece of driftwood to throw. That simple interaction, throwing a stick for a stranger's dog, was the first time I remember genuinely smiling in months. Mark moved back to his hometown after the divorce. According to mutual friends, he's working at his father's insurance agency now. I heard he tried to continue things with Karen after I left, but it fell apart quickly. I guess some relationships aren't built to last outside the thrill of secrecy. As for Karen, she's still in Portland. She sent me a letter about 3 months ago, an actual paper letter, not an email. She's been sober for 6 months now and wrote that getting help for her alcohol problem has made her confront a lot of her decisions more honestly. She didn't ask for forgiveness, just wanted me to know she's working on herself. I haven't responded yet. I'm not sure if I will. On the work front, I did get that promotion. I'm now heading a team of 5 people, and while the learning curve has been steep, I find the challenges engaging. Last month, I led a presentation to our company's board of directors. As I stood there confidently answering their questions, I had a moment of clarity about how far I've come from the broken person I was less than a year ago. My apartment is starting to feel like home. I've painted the walls colors I love but Mark would have hated. I bought a piano, something I've wanted since childhood but never pursued. I'm taking lessons on Saturday mornings from a retired music teacher who lives in my building. I'm terrible at it, but it's mine. I've reconnected with old friends and made some new ones. My college roommate Lisa visited for a week in the spring. We stayed up late drinking wine and reminiscing about simpler times. My coworker Jen introduced me to her running group, and I've started joining them on Sunday mornings. The physical exertion helps clear my head, and the post-run brunches have become a highlight of my week. I've even started dating again, which has been interesting. The first guy I went out with spent the entire dinner talking about his fantasy football league. The second one asked about my divorce within the first 15 minutes, then proceeded to tell me about all the red flags he noticed in his past relationships. But the third date was with someone promising, Nathan, a civil engineer I met through a community volunteer project. We've been seeing each other for about 2 months now. Nathan knows about my past and understands when I need to take things slow. He's divorced too, though under different circumstances. There's something comforting about being with someone who has also had to rebuild their life. Last weekend, we went hiking and had a picnic by a waterfall. Sitting there laughing about his failed attempt to skip stones across the water, I realized I hadn't thought about Mark or Karen all day. My relationship with my family has evolved as well. My parents were devastated by the divorce initially, they had truly seen Mark as a son. But over time, they've come to accept my decision and have been supportive in their own ways. Mom and I now have a standing weekly video call where we cook the same recipe together in our separate kitchens. Dad has been helping me learn basic home maintenance skills. Last month he taught me how to fix a leaky faucet. The hardest part has been family gatherings where Karen would have normally been present. My birthday, Thanksgiving, Christmas, there's always a moment when her absence feels like a presence itself. My mom accidentally set a place for her at Easter dinner out of habit, and we all pretended not to notice when she quietly removed it. I still have difficult days. Certain anniversaries hit hard, the day we got engaged, our wedding date. Last month, I found an old photo strip of Karen and me from a mall photo booth when we were teenagers, both wearing too much eyeliner and making goofy faces. I stared at it for a long time before putting it away in a box instead of throwing it out. I'm not ready to completely erase those memories yet, even if they're now tinged with betrayal. I've come to realize that healing isn't linear. Some days I feel strong and at peace with what happened. Other days, something small will trigger a memory, and I'll find myself right back in that painful place. But those days are becoming fewer and farther between. As strange as it sounds, I've found myself grateful for certain aspects of this difficult journey. I've discovered strengths I didn't know I had. I've learned who my true friends are. I've rebuilt my life on my own terms. The experience has made me more compassionate toward others going through difficult times and more appreciative of genuine connections. I don't know what the future holds, but for the first time in a long time, I'm looking forward to finding out. Thank you all again for your support throughout this journey. Update 3, it's been 18 months since that day I found Mark and Karen together, and I wanted to share one final update. The biggest news is that Nathan and I got engaged last month. The proposal wasn't elaborate, we were making dinner together at my apartment, well, our apartment now. He moved in 3 months ago, and he just asked in the middle of chopping vegetables for a stir-fry. It was perfect for us, simple, honest, and real. We're planning a small ceremony next spring with just close family and friends. Building a relationship with Nathan has been different from anything I've experienced before. We started with complete honesty about our pasts and what we wanted for the future. Our relationship is built on a foundation of trust and open communication. Sometimes I catch myself waiting for the other shoe to drop, but Nathan understands those moments of doubt and knows they're not about him but about the scars I carry. Work continues to be fulfilling. My team exceeded our targets last quarter, and the company recognized our success at the annual meeting. I recently took on mentoring 2 junior employees, which has been unexpectedly rewarding. Helping them navigate their careers has given me a sense of purpose beyond my own professional growth. I've maintained the new hobbies and connections that helped me through the darkest times. I'm still terrible at piano, but I can now play a few simple songs without too many mistakes. The running group has become an important part of my social circle, and we're training for a half marathon in the spring. 4 months ago, I received another letter from Karen. She's still in Portland and has secured a full-time position with a design agency there. She's been sober for over a year now and continues to work on herself. In this letter, she asked if we could talk on the phone sometime. After thinking about it for several weeks, I agreed. The call was difficult but necessary. We talked for over 2 hours. She explained more about the depression and alcohol abuse that had clouded her judgment, but was clear that she wasn't using those as excuses. I asked questions I'd been carrying for months. Was there ever a moment she considered stopping before I found out? Did she ever think about the consequences? How could she do this to someone who had been there for her through everything? Her answers were honest and painful to hear. There were moments during the call when old anger flared up, and other moments when I felt echoes of our former friendship. By the end, we weren't exactly reconciled, but something had shifted. We agreed to keep in occasional contact, holiday cards, important life updates, that sort of thing. Not the close friendship we once had, but not complete strangers either. I haven't heard from Mark in over a year, which is fine with me. According to mutual friends, he's dating someone new and seems to be doing well. I wish him no ill will, but I also have no desire to reconnect. That chapter of my life is firmly closed. My parents have embraced Nathan wholeheartedly. Dad took him fishing last summer, and Mom has already started sharing family recipes with him. They were understandably cautious at first, worried I might be rushing into another relationship to fill the void, but seeing us together has eased their concerns. Nathan and I have had open discussions about building a future together. We both want children eventually, though we're in no rush. We've talked about buying a house next year, something with a yard for a dog and maybe space for a garden. These conversations about the future no longer fill me with anxiety, instead, they bring a sense of joyful anticipation. Looking back on the past 18 months, I'm amazed at how much has changed. The person I was before discovering the affair feels like a different version of myself, not because the experience improved me. I would never claim that such betrayal was somehow beneficial, but because surviving it showed me aspects of myself I hadn't fully recognized. I've learned that I'm resilient in ways I never knew. I've discovered that while relationships might end, my capacity for connection and trust remains intact. I've found that rebuilding can sometimes lead to structures stronger than what stood before. To anyone reading this who might be going through something similar, it does get better. Not overnight, and not without work, but eventually. The pain doesn't disappear completely. There are still moments when a memory will catch me off guard, but it no longer defines my days.